All right, the latest offer from General Motors is, quote, insulting, according to Sean Fain, and he is the head of the UAW. GM came back with their counteroffer yesterday with a 10% increase in hourly wages, a one-time inflation recognition payment, but no cost of living adjustment, no shorter work week, which is what the UAW is also asking for. Stellantis just came back at about 11 o'clock this morning with their counter, and so far it's looking like a 14% increase, but you can only imagine what the union reaction is going to be to that. And joining me now is Dr. Peter Berg. He's a professor of employment relations, and he's also the director of the School of Human Resources and Labor Relations at Michigan State University. Peter, thanks so much for joining me. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, we're hearing, again, the counter offers that have come in now from Ford, GM, and Stellantis. I want you first, Peter, to kind of give us your take on what the tone has been now moving into this last week or less than a week before the deadline of the contracts expire.
I mean, I think the tone has been in these negotiations more aggressive than in the past, certainly on the part of the union. I do think this is, though, part of the bargaining process. The union puts out demands, companies will put out counter offers, and with about a week to go, there's going to be more back and forth over this next week. The question will be, as the stance of the union, this more aggressive stance, is it going to lead to a deal before the strike deadline or something that will come after that strike deadline?
And I think when we think about negotiations, and we all know that you can wiggle between a couple of numbers, you're looking at the UAW is that they want a 40% increase. You've got Ford coming back at 9, GM coming back at 10, Stellantis at 14. There is still a lot of ground here, or is this almost to a point where Sean Fain is saying, look, there's nothing that's going to do to satisfy. We're going to take you right up to the line, and there could be devastating economic consequences for all of these companies involved, should they all be the target?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big questions is that gulf between the offers now something that can be bridged by the deadline or not? I do think that Sean Fain has taken an aggressive approach, and there is a likelihood, I would not be surprised, I would say, if a strike occurs and this ground can't be made up. I think that will be very costly to the companies to do that, but also costly to the workers as well. The big question would be, does Sean Fain see this as an important tool to help bridge the gap between these offers, to help raise the offers on the part of the companies? We also don't know what is the wage increase that is actually expected by the UAW. Is it in the 40 to 46%, or is there something else they'd be willing to accept and trade off on conditions?
And I think that's a really important point. We're talking, about the percentage of a wage increase, but also the cost of living adjustments, and also going back to a pension system as well. What are the most important things that you think could come out of this that maybe then other companies could take a look at and see that they've got to maybe adjust how they're dealing with their employees?
I think one of the issues, what's not clear to me is how important work-life flexibility is. They have the proposal of shrinking the work week, but there are other ways to get flexibility for their workers that workers may value. And that's something that we don't hear as much about other than these wage and benefit changes, is what will happen with flexibility. The other thing is the two-tiered wage system. How important is that a priority versus overall wage increases, and where will that trade-off come?
Can you tell us, Peter, a little bit about, I guess, the economic fallout? And we've talked about how production would change for each of the companies. Should there be a one-day strike? Should there be a 10-day strike? But I'm almost looking at more of an economic impact, maybe for all of us. Especially in Michigan, should the production stop, and then you've got the ripple effect on other industries, and even thinking about media and media buys of an auto company that is not going to be advertising. Give us a little sense of what we could all feel this impact, and not even just workers.
I mean, you're right that there's going to be add-on ripple effects. If workers aren't working and they aren't getting wages, they're not spending that money in their local communities at stores and restaurants and retail shops. You have the lost production of vehicles coming online, and so the ripple effects onto suppliers that can happen within Michigan as well. And the big question of how important this will be is, how long will the strike last? And that is we just don't know the answer to that question. We can calculate, there have been calculations in the millions for a week for the strike. It can have effects in the millions, but it can very quickly rise into the billions of dollars as well. And so will this push, Michigan, I think the communities where there is auto production will feel it first, but it could also expand into other communities where there's manufacturing that has links to the auto industry. And a lot of communities are affected by auto production, particularly in the southern part of Michigan.
All right, Peter, last question for you. As someone who is an expert in, in HR, are there certain words that you'll be looking to hear from either the company or Shawn Fain in these next 6 days or so that will either set off alarm bells for you or that either set saying, they could be on to something?
I think what I'm going to be looking for is when things often get a little quieter. That means the company and the union are talking more. I would be looking for the strike deadline. And are we going to see any movement on part where both parties might say, you know what, we're going to extend the contract deadline? Once you start extending that deadline, it indicates the parties think they're close to getting a deal that they can live with. If we don't see any movement there, or if we see parties going, no, nothing's good, then I think it raises the high likelihood that we're going to see a stoppage, that we'd see a strike.